Welcome back to another tutorial by Mr. Marcus and all of our wonderful math videos. Remember to like if you like it, leave comments and questions at the bottom, and subscribe to the channel. I'd like to thank people like Dozy, Carlos, Mirab, and Jake who have actually been leaving comments. Remember to also leave your questions at the bottom or to message me on Pupil Path. Today we'll be converting standard form equations into slope-intercept equations. In order to do this, there's only a couple of steps, but they need to be followed exactly in order to be done. The purpose of doing this is that eventually we can graph them just like we did in the last lesson, but they can't be graphed if they're still written in standard form. So we need to convert them to slope-intercept. We're given a standard form equation like this, called that because it has the x and y on the same side of the equal sign. The first step is going to be to move the x. Now we can't actually physically move it to the other side of the equal sign, so what we need to do is cancel it out on one side by using a negative 6x to the positive 6x, and by doing the same thing to the other side and putting a negative 6 over there. Notice how I wrote it far off to the side. That's for a good reason. I don't want to actually subtract that. On one side, 6x and negative 6x should wind up canceling each other out. Just like that. Now, 12 minus 6x is only 12 minus 6x. Can't actually be combined because they're not like terms. So I bring them to y, the equal sign, and just the 12 minus 6x. From there, the next step is to divide everything by y's coefficient. Y's coefficient is the number that sits next to y. In this case, that number is 2. In order to do this step properly, you need to divide each and every term by 2. 2y is our first term, we divide that by 2. Our second term is positive 12, and we need to also divide that by 2. And the third term in this equation is negative 6x. We also need to divide that by 2. Now the answers to those three questions can be achieved simply by doing the division. 2y divided by 2 is y. 12 divided by 2, whether you're using fingers or a calculator, should get you 6. And then, if x's coefficient divides evenly, like negative 6 divided by 2, then just divide. If it doesn't, then you'll have to use a different step, which I'll show you in the next question. But here, negative 6 can be divided by 2. So you can actually do the literal calculation itself. Negative 6 and 2 have different signs, so the rules of multiplication and division say when the signs are different, you're going to wind up with a negative answer, and I wind up with negative 3x. This is all you have to do. You do not have to solve anything. There is no answer for x. When you're converting, you just want to make sure that a standard form equation eventually becomes a slope-intercept equation. Now you may notice that it seems that the intercept and the slope are written on opposite sides the way we like it. So I'm going to recommend that you switch those around. Notice that they retain their signs, the negative 3x and the positive 6 retain their signs, and that's all you have to do. When you're done with that, there is no more steps to do. All we need is to get it to look like y equals mx plus or minus b when we're done. You started with 6x plus 2y equals 12, and your final result was y equals negative 3x plus 6. This is your answer. There's nothing more to do. You're not going to try to solve for anything. You're not trying to give a number. You're leaving it just like that. If there wasn't an opportunity to graph that, then you would graph it using the lesson we did before. So let's take a look at a different one. In this case, we're going to have to do something slightly different, but the same procedures. We look at 3y minus 4x equals 9, and our first step is going to be the same. We're going to move, notice the quotes, the x to the other side. We can't actually move it, so keeping in mind that this is a negative 4x, because the sign that comes before the term belongs to that term, we're going to eliminate it on one side by using its inverse, which is positive 4x, but the rules of equation say when you do something to one side, you must do it to the other. So I'm also going to go plus 4x on the other side. Notice again, I'm not writing it under the 9 because I can't do 9 plus 4x. So now, when I try to sum this and get the answers on the bottom, all I'm going to do is cancel out the negative 4x and the positive 4x, and then bring down everything else that I didn't touch. I left the 3y alone on the left side, and then on the right side of the equal sign, I just have 9 plus 4x. I'm not going to try to add them. They don't make 13 anything. 9 plus 4x, because they're not like terms, stay as 9 plus 4x. It's like saying, what if you had 9 cups and 5 plates? Together, would they make 14 cup plates? No. They would just be 9 cups and 5 plates. So here we just have 9 plus 4x. The second step, which is really the final step, would be to divide by y's coefficient. Notice again, it's not written like y equals mx plus b yet. So we're going to switch around those two terms, the 9 and the 4x, and we're going to write them in the opposite positions and make it 4x plus 9. So it looks more like the way we want to see it when we're finally done, which is going to look like a slope-intercept equation. Now, I bring down the 3y, and again, the second step is to divide everything by y's coefficient, which in this case is 3. 3y gets divided by 3, but so does everything else. I'm also going to divide the 4x by 3, and I'm also going to divide the 9 by 3. But hold on. 4 can't be divided evenly by 3. 3 doesn't divide evenly into 4. So what is it that I'm going to do with this particular problem? Well, in this case, if I divide 4 by 3, I'm just going to make a fraction out of those numbers. X's coefficient on top, and the y number I'm dividing by on the bottom. So I'm just going to take the 4 divided by 3 and just leave it as 4 divided by 3, or 4/3 x. I leave the 4 from the x and the 3 from the y, and I leave them as those same two numbers that are next to the x, because it still says 4 divided by 3, which is exactly how I want it. 9 divided by 3, on the other hand, does divide in evenly, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So that's how I get my answer there. Now, remember, there is nothing more for you to do. At this point, all you're going to do is write this as your answer. If there was an opportunity to take this and graph it, then you would use the procedure that we used yesterday, like, for instance, graphing the y-intercept and then counting the slope. Now, if you want to copy the steps, you can pause it now, put it down if you want to have it in front of you while you're doing the work, but basically, you're going to move the x to the other side of the equal sign, the one that the y is not on. You can't move it, so if it's a negative, you add it to both sides. If it's a positive, you minus from both sides. Divide by y's coefficient, everything. If the x coefficient can be divided evenly, just do it. If it can't be divided evenly, just make a fraction out of the two numbers. Okay? Make sure you leave your comments on the bottom. Okay? So far, I'm loving those questions. Jake, Mirab, Dozy, and even one time Carlos. Great job. Everybody else, make sure you're watching the videos. You can leave comments. They don't just have to be a thumbs up. You can ask questions if you have questions. Make sure you're sending in your work. And most importantly, stay safe, stay healthy. Don't go outside.